Let me explain agriculture first. As I was explaining, one of the key lessons from liberalization is the importance of healthy competition, right? If you take, for instance, the podcast itself, you've done well podcasting, but there are many others who are podcasting as well, right? So there's enough competition. Because there is competition, you actually, you have to try and all the time be, you have to have your A game in order to be able to compete with others, right? And that is true for every other producer. You're producing content, actually, right? You're a producer of content, and you can go. For instance, you put it up on YouTube, but you can choose other platforms also. In other words, you can decide to go and sell your product or service or whatever you're producing wherever you want, right? I can go and, for instance, similarly, I produce this content, which is this book. I had the choice of actually, I could go to, publisher X, I could go to publisher Y, I could go to publisher Z. I had the freedom to basically go and sell, in this case, basically the content of this book to whichever publisher that were. If you take something like, take this coat, textiles, this mic, whoever, any producer in this country except the farmer. And I want to, let that sink in, that every other producer in this country except the farmer has the freedom to go and sell his or her produce, wherever he or she wants. The farmer is also a producer of what? Producer of food, right? The farmer, on the other hand, for all the rhetoric that we have, political rhetoric that we have, we don't give that basic freedom to the farmer to go and sell his or her produce wherever he or she wants. And what is the impact of this? The impact of this is actually felt, the bulk of that is felt by the small farmer. Let me explain here. Because of the APMC Act, the small farmer, cannot go and sell his produce wherever he or she wants. He can only go and sell in the mandi that is closest to him, right? So if you think about a small farmer, I come from a small town. I've actually, so I've seen stuff like this, and therefore I'm speaking.
Which
both
town
from.
Do you come from?
I was born and brought up in Bilaspur, in what is we thought about it. It was part of the combined Madhya Pradesh. Now it is part of Chhattisgarh. And then I actually spent some of my schooling in Durg district, also Durg, Bhilai. Those basically towns there, right? So if you take, for instance, a small farmer, let's say he wants to go and sell his produce, what does he do? He doesn't have a tractor, he doesn't have a tractor trailer. Obviously, he's not wealthy enough to be able to buy those things. So he hires a tractor trailer. He wants to go. So, the farmer, I'm sure, gets up, gets up early in the morning. I've seen that. He gets up early in the morning, reaches the mandi at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning with all his produce, enthusiastic to go and sell his produce. Now the intermediary, who's called the arhatia, in the mandi, knows very well that this small farmer does not have the option to go and sell his produce to anybody else, right? A basic freedom that every other producer in the country has. So what does he do? Or he basically says, okay, I know this guy cannot go anywhere. So the farmer has basically come, he's losing his day's earnings because he's come here and he's hired a tractor trailer, right? So those are investments he's made. The intermediary makes him wait. Actually, it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock, by this time, the small farmer is actually exhausted. His patience is running thin. And he just wants to actually now sell it, right? Because he doesn't want to take this produce and come back again. If he has to come back, he has to, he has to hire the tractor trailer one more. He has to pay for that, pay the rent for that. He has to lose one day of work, and therefore 1 day of earnings. All these are costs, tangible costs. So he basically thinks that it is rather whatever price, jo jitna bhi milta hai, usme bech deta hu, right? That's what this arhatia knows very well, because he doesn't have the option to be able to go and sell anywhere else. So what does he basically do? Now he makes him wait, and at about 4 o'clock, this really farmer who's running very thin on his patience. He can't even try and pressure that arhatia, because he wants actually to have his business, right? He wants to come and sell next time as well. So he can't pressurize. So what does he do? He sells it, and as a result, if you look at the data, because of this phenomenon, of 100 rupees of value added, let's say in farm produce, 90 rupees is cornered by the intermediary. The small farmer gets only 10 rupees. Think about it. So for all the rhetoric we have about farmers and small farmers, we've not basically, he's not getting his due. He's only getting 10 rupees out of the 100 rupees that he's jointly, helping to produce, right? Now, if suppose, let's say, we give this freedom to say you can go and sell, you can go and sell to, for instance, to any corporate also. It could be, it could be corporate X, or it could be just he can go and sell to a mandi. If basically a corporate is allowed, the corporate, there may be many corporates. There may be corporate X who might be willing to buy his produce, corporate Y. So he can bargain among them. He can, not just that, in this case, he can say, he can tell the Arhatya saying, so he's come at 7 o'clock, but if he's waited for, let's say, 8 o'clock, maybe 1 hour, he's waited for maybe one more hour, 2 hours. At 9 o'clock, he says, साहब आपको लेना है तो लो, नहीं तो मैं जाता हूँ बगल वाले मंडी, right? If you want to buy, please do. Otherwise, I have the opportunity, I have the freedom to go and sell this produce in the next mandi. I picked up my phone, I've called him, and I can go. The Arhatya now, with this freedom, the Arhatya knows that this is a tangible threat. It is not an empty threat, right? Because, he has the freedom. What does the Arhatya now do? He says, okay, मैं खरीद लेता हूँ. And now with this, therefore the small farmer actually is not driven to frustration, to the limits of his impatience, and now he will get about 50% of the, which is a fair deal, because the Arhatya needs to buy his produce. So, and the farmer needs to produce that. Both the buyer and the seller are important in any transaction. But in this case, unlike the very skewed, which is the seller is getting only 10 rupees and the buyer is basically getting 90 rupees and 100 rupees of value added, here it'll be 50-50. That's a fair deal. This is what actually, undoing the socialist era policies can do. Not just this, and many people actually, because I think that those who actually voice about this are often people who benefit from the status quo. They'll say, the coming of corporates will basically, destroy the small farmer, etc., which is actually not true, because the presence of corporates in sectors
institutionalizes everything.
Yes, actually, I mean, the same corporate that actually works, let's say, in buying textiles or actually, these suits, etc., if it has not destroyed those industries, the small people there, why should it destroy in the case of farming? Not obvious, right? And in fact, if there are corporates, for instance, the small farmer can contract directly to sell, and there will be maybe corporate X, corporate Y. If corporate X is basically not giving the farmer a good deal, he can say, corporate Y is giving me 20% more, I will go to him. So corporate X will say, is it the case that corporate Y is giving you 20% more? Okay, I'll also give you 20% more. So the bargaining power of the small farmer increases far more when he has many selling opportunities. Right now, we don't have that. There is no competition, for the farmers' produce. So this is basically one of the key socialist era policies. One more, again, in the context of farming itself, this is a relic of 1960s when India faced food shortages, but today we have abundance of food. We don't need to, it's really unfortunate that this still continues when the state of our food economy has changed drastically, right? I'm talking about the Essential Commodities Act, which is, another relic of the socialist era. An intrinsic feature of farming is that supply is seasonal, but demand is all through the year, right? When the Kharif crop comes, actually, then that is when, for the rice is in abundance, supply is huge, and, demand is much lower than supply. But you need demand all through so when the Kharif crop comes, actually at that time, obviously supply-demand mismatch is very high and prices are very low. But 6 months later, demand is there, supply is not as much. So you have to store. Whenever you have a situation where supply is seasonal and demand is all through there, you have to store, right? And I'll give you the example of something as prosaic, let's say, as achar. Think about, our grandmothers basically, they made achar. Even my mother makes achar now. You don't make achar all through the year, right? You make it when the season. For instance, if it is, let's say, if it is pickle that is made, mango pickle, it is made in the summer, but you make it in such a way that it lasts all through the year. That is because you have supply that is seasonal and demand that is all through the year. So that's why a lot of oil is put into pickles, so that they last all through the year to serve demand that is all through the. So in a similar way, like this example of pickles like achar, what advanced economies have done, other economies have done, is to have cold storage facilities, so that when the supply produce comes in, the small farmer can hire this cold storage. He need not go and sell it when the price is very low. He can wait for a time when the price is much better and go and sell it. He will get a much higher price then, and therefore he will basically get a higher income as well. This is a organic way of increasing the income of the small farmer. And for all the rhetoric, we basically treat all storage as hoarding. Every form of storage in agriculture is treated as hoarding as part of the Essential Commodities Act. As a result, there's been, if for instance, let's say I am somebody who goes and invests in cold storage, creating cold storage facilities that I can hire out to the small farmer, I can be put in jail for basically saying, oh, you're not storing your hoarder. Why will I have the incentive to go and create cold storage? And that is why we don't have cold storage facilities in our country. And who gets hurt by this? Again, the small farmer. The rich farmer actually can go and buy. He has the deep pockets to go and buy those cold storage facilities. Again, this status quo benefits the rich farmer, hurts the small farmer. So I think it is really important to understand that many of these socialist era policies, actually continuing the status quo really benefits the well-to-do people. It really hurts the most vulnerable, in this case a small farmer. In a similar way, when it comes to labor laws, and I think I can continue giving you examples, but the broad point that I'm making is that there is absolutely a desperate need in order for us to be able to actually become more prosperous. We need to actually remove the relic of socialist era policies that we have in many sectors.
And the government tried to do it via farm laws, but
yes,
it was opposed and the government had to revoke them.
And here actually I must mention, because at that time, for instance, many those that were in support of state governments and federalism, etc., said agriculture is a state subject. Let me grant that. But let's take that argument to its logical conclusion. If agriculture is a state subject, and so states have the power to actually implement policies in agriculture, let's basically complete that argument by also recognizing that power and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. And therefore, it is then, if they have the power, they also have the responsibility to take care of the small farmer. And therefore, now, why don't states go and, do the same, the equivalent of the farm laws? Why don't states go and implement? I think we as citizens have to ask that question. Not only will farmers benefit, even consumers will benefit also from this. It's a win-win for sure. And that's why we need to be asking state government, saying, yes, you all said that this is a state subject, that you have the power to legislate on the APMC Act, on some of these. Why don't you legislate then? If you have power, you have responsibility. I want to remind you, of the two sides of the same coin. You're talking about your power. I want to talk to you about your responsibility as well.
And why didn't, just asking in, from a previous past lens of the past, that the state governments which had the same central party ruling, right? Why didn't they introduce the farm laws then?
No, I don't think this is as much from the perspective of political parties or which political party is in power. More often than not, I think many of us common people don't understand that that the status quo is only benefiting the large farmer. And eventually in a democracy, it is basically the preferences of the people that shape government policy. So if common people don't understand, and I think, I don't think it needs an economist like me to actually tell any common person. What I'm saying is absolutely plain common sense, right? That if you don't have the option to basically go and sell something, if you don't have the option to go and store something, as agricultural produce, which is seasonal, then obviously it hurts those that don't have the deep pockets, which is a small farmer. So without actually that, that basically recognition, that pressure being put by the citizens, you won't have, irrespective of the, of the political dispensation that is at the state level, they will not focus on it. I think it is therefore, now absolutely important that we as citizens actually say, okay, states said this is state level policy, go and implement it. States, hey, it's your responsibility.